Welcome to a Business Life series, brought to you by HubYuno. The inspiration for this series is best summed up by two of our favourite quotes. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, by Benjamin Franklin, and Warren Buffett's, the best investment you can make is in yourself. The more you learn, the more you earn. In a Business Life series, we get business leaders from all sectors and walks of life to tell their stories. The hope is that you can learn from their success and failures and apply it to your own business journey. In this interview, I talk with Jeni Smith. She is a passionate entrepreneur whose story starts from working with nuns in Fiji to starting her own networking business during lockdown. I love chatting with her about her story, and I think there is a lot you can take away from this as well. Before we get started, let me just quickly tell you about what we do. Do you want to grow your small business but are put off by extortionate fees charged by marketing agencies or not sure where to start? We promise you that all the skills and techniques you need are learnable. At HubYuno, we give you agency level knowledge with ongoing support for a fraction of the cost with our HubYuno platform. Our online courses and webinars teach you the online marketing skills you need to grow your business. The bite-sized mobile-friendly video lessons fit in with your busy work schedule, and the webinars provide our community with ongoing support to make continued marginal gains, test out new ideas and stay ahead. Try it for free with 2 courses and a selection of webinars. Just click sign up for free, search HubYuno, or click the link in the description if you are watching on YouTube. Hi Jeni, how are you doing?
Hi Johnny, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Some interesting things in the background. What's the telescope? Is it just something you like?
Yeah, that was just a gift that we've got like in our so I'm in the loft in my house,
Yeah.
And there's like a little nook area with like a tiny little window that reminds me of like being in like a lighthouse or something. So I felt that would go well. And then now that I've kind of tried to turn this into more of I use this space since lockdown. It's just ended up in here. It's something to look at. Yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so how we usually start these is just to give a kind of elevator pitch, like a short story in maybe 30 seconds or a minute, just kind of summing up your journey in business.
Right, I'll try and keep it short. So I grew up just outside Carlisle in Cumbria and didn't know what I wanted to do after school. So I ended up taking a year out and lived in Fiji with nuns and worked in a school with deaf kids, which wasn't the plan, but that just kind of happened. And then travelled a bit on the way back and then ended up going to uni in Liverpool and studying business and finance. And while I was there in my second year, I answered one of these random emails that says, do you want work experience in a creative sector? And I was like, I like creative people. I'll give that a go. So I ended up doing some voluntary work at a company that did CGI and animation, and I still don't really understand what that is. But he took me along to my first ever networking event, and it's not something I'd ever been told about at school or heard of. So I was literally just thrown in a room full of businessmen in suits, expected just to talk to them. And I was absolutely terrified. And to be honest, I'm pretty hungover as well. So I hid in the toilets for most of the event, but I ended up going to more networking events, fell in love with it. On the back of that, when I graduated, I got my first job. So I stayed in Liverpool, doing business development, and networking was always a part of that. So after a year, I launched my first business, which was me being a full-time networker. After a year of that, I took what I'd learned attending events and launched a networking organisation in Cumbria. Sold that, moved to the northeast when I met my husband in Magaluf of all places, and was the MD of a networking organisation over here in the northeast. I then did that for about 3 years, spent a couple of years then, I left there and wrote a book that I published on something completely different. I then worked in the tech industry for 2 years, and then now I've started my own business doing networking again, but now I'm teaching people how to network and create networking strategies. So that was like the short version.
No,
that was missed it out.
That was perfect. That's perfect. It was interesting going back to the very start because I took a year out, gap year after school as well.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
I loved it. I completely changed what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went to uni and did marine biology and then completely changed after that. But I'm just wondering if it's something that you would recommend to young people, or whether it changed your perspective on life, or do you think people rush into school too much?
Massively. If I had gone to uni when I was 18, what I would have got out of uni at that stage in life and what I probably would have studied would have been so different. So taking that step back after A levels, and I meet 18-year-olds now and I think, oh, I was so young to like literally go and live on the other side of the world on my own and then travel. Like, it scares the Jesus out of us now. But at the time I just kind of did it. And it was through a charity called Gap. And they like put you within schools and they have placements all over the world. And it changed. I grew up in a small village just outside of Carlisle. So it was quite an insular like upbringing almost, even though my mum herself, like, she's American but grew up in South Africa. So I've got quite a kind of diverse family, but still like going traveling myself, just it gave me so much more personal confidence, but also just meeting so many people from all over the world who were at different stages doing different things. Some people had, got divorced and were just traveling. There was like some women who were in their 70s who had left their husbands at home and were just backpacking. There's other people who were, having a midlife crisis, or, just all these different people that you meet. And it really helps you to take responsibility. And I think university, I'm glad I learned that responsibility before university, because it allowed me to be a bit more focused when it came to my studying and getting more from that experience. So yeah, it definitely changed, and I definitely recommend it 100%.
Yeah, it's something I always say to young people, like, you've got to go out and try and be independent, or I'd almost say get a job as early as possible. So you came out of university and you had your first job, and then how quickly was it between you getting your first job that you set something up for yourself?
It was a year. So I did my last exams in the May 2008. That's when I graduated, and then a year after, so I was going to loads of networking events in Liverpool, and I loved network. Like, at first, obviously, I hated it, terrified the life out of it, but I ended up falling in love with it, and was meeting all these people and finding out about their businesses and what they were passionate about. But I met so many people networking who literally would say to me, I hate these events, don't want to be here. And you're like, all right. So there was a lot of people that hated networking, I discovered quite quickly. But then I also found myself, when I was meeting people, connecting them and saying, oh, you need to speak to this person and you need to speak to this person. And it was something I really got like excited about. I was like, oh, you two will like be able to do business, or you two are going to get on so well, or you can collaborate, or whatever. So my first business a year after graduating was, I literally invented a job where I was like a full-time networker. So I used to go networking on behalf of a lot of different people who either didn't like it or didn't have the time to do it. And they were like a small business who probably couldn't afford to employ someone full-time to do business development. So I kind of I did a corporate analysis of their business to begin with. So I really got to know their product, services, target market, who they were working with at the moment, who they wanted to work with. And then I used to just go out. I would go to like 5 events a day, Monday to Friday, like up at 5:30, networking by like 6:30, lunches, charities. And the more you go networking, the more invites you get to other things. So the more people that you know, the more other people want to know you. So I'd end up getting invited to, like, there was restaurant openings all the time, and international tennis tournaments and charity events and awards evenings. I didn't pay for food or booze for like a year. I started a blog about it called The Diary of a Networker that got picked up by a website. So then like little shops would get in touch and say, oh, do you want to pick a dress? And like, because they get the promotion of it, kind of thing. And it was amazing. And for a year out of uni, I like proper landed on my feet by accident. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was hard work. But at that stage in my life, it was like this party. I was living in the city centre. Like, it was amazing. Yeah, I really loved it. But after a year, I didn't want to talk to anyone. I literally could not, like, on a weekend, I had no it was weird, because the more social I was, the less social life I had, because it became work, if that makes sense. There's all this networking, this socializing. You don't then socialize with your friends because you're just drained from it. So it was amazing for a year, but after a year I was like, oh, I need to crawl into a hole and nap. So yeah.
No, I think that's an interesting part of it, though, because you went from probably the security of having a job to, and having a wage coming in, to I'm going to do something for myself. I'm just literally going to carve out a niche for myself. So was it like just a feeling, or were you just sort of young and went for it, or did you just properly analyze it? Because the only reason I'm sort of asking these is thinking there might be some people watching these who are thinking, okay, I'm working for someone at the moment, but I feel like I've got an idea, or I feel like there's a niche I can go into, or I feel like I can do something for myself. Like, what was your process? Was it just jump in and see what happened, or was it planning, or?
No, it was planning. I remember buying this, I love stationery. I'm a proper geek with stationery. I've got my like branded stationery. I remember buying this like notebook, and I just sat in this cafe and wrote down all my ideas. And like, it's only happened. It's happened a few times in my life where I've got an idea and I literally have to get it out. And I just sat and wrote down all these ideas, and it was like, it almost was like not doing it wasn't an option. I had to try. And my biggest fear is the fear of unfulfilled potential for me. If the idea of getting really old and looking back and thinking, oh, if only I'd tried, that's literally my biggest fear. So I would rather try something and fail, but at least I've given it a go. I'm more scared of not doing something. So, but I am quite logical, and I'll go through whatever steps I need to in the thought processes. So while I was at university, I worked in a bar called The Font, which it was like Cheers, like it was like a family. So when I left the job to start my own business, I was working in a bar as well. I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't all in, but I wasn't stupid. So there's a difference. So I did it and it worked to an extent, but I also had kind of a backup at the same time, in that if I needed hours in the bar, I could work hours so I could pay my rent. Because you've got to feed yourself. Although I got free food at all the events, but still, I had to pay my rent and stuff. So yeah, it was a logical leap of faith, I guess.
I think one of the themes you described is one of the ones I come across a fair bit. Is that people seem to think, people who don't go for things like this always maybe look at the negatives and think, oh, what if this bad happens, or what if that bad happens? Whereas I think you've summed up how I feel, is like, you only get one chance at life. Like, why would you not do it? Like, if you're talented and hardworking, worst comes to worst, someone will want to employ you. So I think at some point, as long as you're not massively overstretched on your mortgage, et cetera, you can go back and do other things and make the best of it. I just don't want to leave something on the table and think, what if, No,
that terrified, that genuinely is like a real fear. And you're right. It's that, the worst case scenario, it doesn't work. You try something else. It's not going to be the end of the world. As long as you're smart with it, don't invest your life savings and, put your house up, and lose as long as you're not daft with it, you're sensible, but you've got to back yourself and you've got to at least try, because if you don't try, you'll never know. And that's more important.
Oh, 100%. So you went for that job. So was it just, so you finished that after a year because it was kind of like, I guess, tough and sort of, you take up a lot of time. So what was the next step after that? Were you thinking, okay, I'm going back into a job, or are you thinking I'm going to try something else?
Yeah, well, after that, my sister got engaged around that time as well. And I'd been away from home for like 5 years, and I was like, right, I'm ready to move home. So I moved back to Carlisle and moved back in. Did I move back in with mum? Yeah, I moved back in with my mum, and was like, right, what am I going to do? I need to be grown up here and get a real job. So like I applied for jobs. Well, actually, to be fair, first of all, I thought I'll go networking and meet people, because that's what I knew how to do. So I was like, I'll go networking and I'll meet people, because I didn't know anyone in Carlisle in business at the time. I remember Googling like big Carlisle businesses, because I just didn't know anyone that was there, kind of thing. So I thought I'd go networking. And when I went to look at what events were available, there was literally like one event a month. There was just nothing. And I was used to 3, 4, 5, 6 sometimes events in a day, like in Liverpool or Manchester. And there was nothing. So I was like, right. So I applied for some jobs, went for some interviews, and was like, I'm not passionate about this, what you're doing. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to do it, because it'll just like destroy my soul. So I was like, right, I'm going to take what I'd learned attending all these events and flip it. And that's when I launched my second business, which was a networking company. There was no events going on. So I was like, right, there's a gap in the market. No one's hosting networking events. I've been to enough events to know what works and what doesn't. So then that's when I launched my second business, which was the networking organization. So it's like a membership-based networking company. So I put on 4 events a month. And to be fair, at first, it was like pulling teeth. It was so difficult because people didn't network. They didn't see the value in networking. Even though they did business through relationships, they didn't kind of think of it, oh, I'm going to a networking event to build relationships. They just had relationships and did business. So it was a lot of the first year was really tough, and it was trying to educate businesses on how powerful networking can be, and by attending events they're creating all these opportunities to build these new relationships which will result in business. So it was difficult, but then when it was Lloyd Motor Group, I think it was the first kind of large business that joined as a member. When they joined, then it changed, and it other businesses started paying attention then, because they are a really well-respected company, especially in that region. So when they joined, other companies started paying a bit more attention, and that was kind of a changing point for that business, which was fab. And I was over there for about 5 years doing that, which was fab, and yeah, I learned a lot. But
so that bit is interesting, where you're saying that you knew it was going to work when the motor group joined.
Yeah.
Were you always sure it was, like, this is a question I asked a lot, were you always sure it was going to work, or like, was that the change point, or were you like, yeah, what, like, how long were you giving yourself with the idea before, like, so it's almost like people ask, like, how long should I keep going before I kind of give up or try something else? Like, how long before were you giving yourself, and did that come in at the right time, or were you seeing gradual increase, so you were just going to keep going with it anyway?
It's not something that I always knew. I knew that it should work because there was a gap in the market. Networking is like a powerful means of marketing, and so in theory it should. It was just, I mean, I put on an event. I remember I put on an event and one person turned up, and literally it was awful. It's like when you're a kid and you have a birthday party and you think no one's going to come. That was my life. It was awful. So we ended up just getting drunk, I think. And like, yeah, but it wasn't, so it's not all, it was hard. It was really hard. And when things like that happen, it's so demoralizing, especially when you've got to do it again the week after and again the week after that. And you're like, why am I doing this? I was in a position where for the beginning stage, at least with living back at home, I didn't have that financial pressure, which was really good. It allowed me the breathing space to give it more time. For me, it wasn't a matter of, right, if it doesn't work by this date, then I'm calling it quits. It was more of, if I've gone through everything I can possibly think of to make this work, and then it still doesn't work, then I'm out, kind of thing. Then I either have to pivot or I have to just do something different. But there was always another idea. So there was always something else. I was like, right, I'll introduce loyalty cards and membership cards. So as a member, you got a really nice kind of credit card with a personalized number on. And it was kind of adding this element of prestige to it, where you got discounts at shops. And then I added in, right, I'm going to do an awards evening where it's public and it's up to the public to nominate and then choose the winners, and then it becomes viral, and then that'll build the brand up, and then people love to get dressed up and to go to an awards, and there wasn't really many awards at the time, so then there was that idea. And then so there was always other things that I could do to help to try and pull it up until it got to a place where, right, it's sustainable. Now I can then start building on it, kind of thing. So until I got to a stage where I just couldn't do it anymore, then I was going to keep going with it because I believed in it, and I knew, and I'm stubborn as hell. I am, and I'll dig my heels in. So I think that helps quite a lot. Unless you've gone through everything you can possibly think of, then there's always something else to try. That's how I felt about it.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I'm relatively stubborn as well. I think if I, you know, I do think there's a difference in it. Like if you just are stubborn and you try one thing and that's not working, then you've got to realize, oh, it's not working. But I think there's a different stubborn where you're just like, the idea works. I'm going to try every single possible thing I can do, you know.
Yeah.
So you finished. You finished. How did you finish? Did you say you sold that business before in your
Yeah,
little summary?
yeah. There was a lady who was one of the one of the first ever members, who took it on, because I felt like it was about, I think it was about 4 or 5 years, of running over in Carlisle, running the networking group, and I'd felt like I'd having worked for myself the majority of my career. I felt like I missed out on, most people do it the other way. So they work in teams and then they'll, work for people and then they'll go off and do their own business. And having worked for myself for such a long time, especially so quickly from university, I felt like I'd missed out on a lot of learning from being within a team and working for other people, and that, being part of a group, because it is entrepreneurship or being, self-employed is lonely. And it's hard because that's another thing that networking I think really helps with, because you get people to bounce ideas off and stuff, but it's not the same. And I'd kind of craved that, being part of a team. And then when I met my husband on holiday, he was from the Northeast. I ended up making the decision, right, I need a new challenge. I need to do something else. And I want to be part of a team. So I ended up leaving the business with Helen. She ran it, and moved over to the Northeast and got a normal job. I got a normal job for a little bit, and that didn't really, like an office job. And then there is a networking company in the Northeast called the Muscle Club, and that had been going for years. So I kind of stalked the founder of that and was like, please give me a job. I can totally, let me run your network. I can do this. And just kind of hounded him. And he let me after eventually. So I became the managing director of the Muscle Club about 5 years ago, I think, maybe a bit more now. And I was the MD there for nearly 3 years and got to run the network there. But it was doing what I loved doing, and it was building a network and running a network and organization. But it was within within a team, to being employed, and it was different. It was a different experience for me, having a boss and having colleagues. And then I ended up taking on, by the end, I think I had 3 or 4 members of staff, which I'd never experienced before either. So that was a whole different learning curve, and it wasn't always rosy. But I learned so much from it, and I learned so much from the businesses I was working with in the Northeast as well. Because it's different. Every region has its own way of networking, but it also has its own culture in terms of business. So Cumbria, Liverpool, the Northeast are all very different. So it was a really good experience from that perspective as well. So doing what I love doing and what I'd done self-employed versus doing it employed was totally different experiences, but both of which were really valuable. And I got a lot from it. Yeah. So that was different, but really good.
So how long were you working with it? Like, did you enjoy sort of working a team like you thought you would, or did you sort of miss working for yourself and having that freedom?
That job was quite, even though it was part of a team, it was quite independent, and it started off within, so the Muscle Club's part of another organisation, so I was working with the staff within that organisation, but we ended up breaking away and having our own offices, so then it was quite independent again. So even though I was employed, it felt a lot more like I still had that freedom of being able to be entrepreneurial, which was good, but I wasn't used to having to ask, can I do this kind of thing? It wasn't that I had to ask permission for things, but it depended on especially if it was, diversifying the business or whatever it was. It wasn't my call, which I struggled with. And so that was different. The job that I took following that. So after I was at the Muscle Club for nearly 3 years, and then I took some time out. I took about 3 months out, and then ended up working at an organisation called Sunderland Software City that delivers business support. So that was within the realms of tech and digital, which I knew nothing about. but that was more of a team situation for me. And I think that felt more like the team I'd been looking for, in that I was working with peers and we were working on projects together as well as doing my own independent stuff. And that for me, within the nearly 3 years I was there, not only did I learn a lot about the network and the world of technology and digital and immersive and emerging and all these different acronyms and everything, I learned a lot, but working with people in that team setting, I really got that from my time there, and that was fantastic. And yeah, that was, again, it was different, and I learned a lot. I think I learned so much about relationship management in a different context, because again, working for yourself, you've only got yourself to argue with, I guess. But having to deal with conflicts and having to do, even just being able to deal with different personality types. And I'm quite an outgoing person, but then, working with people who are maybe a bit more introverted or, what have you, and learning how to get the most out of them and how to present myself in a way that makes them comfortable as well. It was just a massive learning curve, but fantastic. But I missed the entrepreneurship. It was calling me again, and I couldn't resist after a while. But I feel like I needed that though. I needed that time of being employed to pick out what I liked about each organization that I've worked for, but also worked with, what I liked about them, their company cultures and all those things. And then now coming back to being, starting another business from fresh with that experience, I can create it in a completely different way to than I want compared to when I first started, that year out of university. I look back at that and I think, all these things, I did so much stuff that I would never even think or dream of doing now. But at the time, you don't know what you don't know. So I think I can't help but feel like all that experience has led to now starting this business. It's all going to contribute and allow me to be better than I was before. And that's all I ever wanted, really. So it could only be a good thing.
So that was your last job you had, and then did I read it was very recently that you started this up?
Yeah, it was in lockdown. So I actually I had a baby 10 months ago. I had my
Congratulations.
first child. Thank you. I had my little girl, Juno, she's 10 months now. She actually just walked this morning on a little walker.
Oh, I feel like part of history on this call.
I know you are. Exactly. So yeah, I had a baby 10 months ago, which is like mentally life-changing. So I was on maternity leave for 7 months. And while I was on maternity leave, luckily she was a sleeper at the beginning. Well, first 2 weeks she didn't sleep a jot, but then after that she slept. And during my time at my last job at Software City, I'd created this networking ecosystem in my mind throughout my years of networking. And the ecosystem was it started off as a doodle, and I used it to explain to some of my colleagues, like why I would send people to certain networking events based on whatever it is that they're doing. Anyway, the CEO, David Dunn, said, right, that's a hypothesis. You need to go and explore that. And I was like, all right. So I ended up taking it to Durham University, who accepted it as one of their projects for their MBA students. So over 2 years, we did 2 rounds of academic research into this ecosystem, which they've proved, like the research kind of showed that it exists. And I can use that ecosystem, that hypothesis now, to tell businesses and explain to them where they should be going networking based on their target markets. So it'd been in my mind during pregnancy. This second lot of research was happening while I was pregnant. So when I had my daughter, and it was still there and it was fresh in my mind, and I wanted to use it and get it out to people to help them be strategic in their approach to networking. So when my daughter was 10 weeks old, I built a website just using Wix. So it's just a homemade, obviously WordPress site, but because she napped all the time, I was like, I need to use my brain. My brain's like going numb already. because she's sleeping. So I built this website, and I had this idea of creating this networking consultancy, this agency, whatever. And it's something that I wanted to do alongside my job, because I did love my job at Software City, and I got so much from it. But then as time went on, it came to a point where I was like, right, I need to kind of make a decision. I can't do both and have a child and, you know, try and have a life in the midst of it. I need to make a choice. So in the new year, 2020, I decided that I wasn't going to return to work following my maternity leave. I wanted to start this business and back myself again. And I felt like it was, again, I had that feeling, that same one where I literally had all these ideas and I had to write it all down and get it out. And if I didn't do it, the thought of not doing it wasn't an option. I had to do it. It was just how I was going to do it. So I told them I wasn't going to return, which was...
Sorry about that, Jenny. My internet dropped out a second.
No worries.
It'll be weird for the people watching this because it'll cut from one to the other. But I found this happening quite a lot. Okay, right. I think before it cut out, you're talking about starting a networking business in lockdown, which people probably think, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't, it just kind of happened. So I'd made the decision to leave my previous job after maternity leave, and I wanted to start this networking agency. And literally within the space of a couple of weeks of me going self-employed, lockdown happened. And I was like, right, how on earth am I meant to teach people? How am I going to sell sell networking training and, you know, networking strategy development when no one can go networking? Because I thought to myself, it's going to be hard enough to get people to invest in networking anyway, because I think people see it as quite a fluffy activity. It's like, oh, you go and have a bacon sarnie and a coffee and blah, 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 where they don't take it as seriously as their other marketing activities. So it was going to be hard enough anyway. And then obviously lockdown happened and I was like, what? You couldn't make it up if you tried. Couldn't make it up. So at the time it felt quite like, right, it's not like I couldn't have gone back to my previous job because I'd already got my P45 and that was done. And it was like, I'm off. I couldn't just go out and get another job because there were no, lockdown had happened. There's literally no jobs. So I had no choice really, but to just go for it. So I took the time, all the work I had lined up, because I had work lined up, delivering training, you know, within the universities and stuff. And so that obviously all got pulled because everything just shut down. So I was like, right, I'm going to take this time, because I had 7 weeks where Dave was on parental, lockdown was going on, so no one was doing anything. So I'll take that time to really lay a foundation for the business, create all my training content, and just get everything planned and ready. And it ended up being it has been so far, like a blessing in disguise, really, because it's allowed me the headspace to completely diversify. So the business plan I had, you know, in March for compared to what it is now is just so different. And I've explored different avenues. So I've got clients, I've got quite a lot of clients. I'm busy, I'm working full time. I'm delivering training remotely. I've created pre-recorded training videos for clients, which is something I never would have explored before. So I've taught myself how to use Camtasia, which is a video editing software, which again, I would never have looked at or invested in had it not been for lockdown. I've created some networking training on a platform called Udemy, which is an online learning platform. So I've got my first course on there, which is teaching people how to network remotely, ironically. And I've got 2 others planned before the end of the year. So all these things that have come out of lockdown, I would not have explored, because I wouldn't have had the time to, because I would have been busy doing all this other stuff. It's allowed me the time to step back and think strategically about how I can be most efficient with my time in order to start generating revenue now. And those are things that can continue after lockdown as well. So as well as being able to reintroduce the stuff I'd originally planned, like doing the in-person training and all the different, you know, the strategy development on a consultancy basis, I can now offer training remotely to people all over the country, all over the world, which I wouldn't have explored before, because it would have people weren't used to the tech before either, whereas now they've had no choice but to get comfortable with attending events remotely. So now it's an option moving forward. So it's really opened up all these different avenues, which can only be a positive thing. Because you've got to try and take positives out of things like this, especially because it's, you know, so yeah, it's been interesting. Launching in lockdown is definitely not what I expected the first few months of business to be, but I couldn't have asked for more, to be fair. So it's going good.
That's a really, really interesting story. So one thing I usually like to ask at the end, you know, slightly sort of cheesy question is, you know, there'll be people watching this at different stages of their business story, or, you know, they'll be right at the start or sort of at the end thinking of pivoting. What are the kind of three main bits of advice that you'd kind of can take from your story and maybe sort of pass on?
Hey, don't be scared of failure, because it doesn't exist. You only fail if you stop trying. So it's up to you whether or not you fail. So yeah, don't be scared of that. I know everyone says it, but like, go with your gut. If you've got something in you that's telling you to either do it or don't do it, then listen, because it knows what it's talking about. And I've gone against it in the past, and you learn your lesson. So yeah, just go with your gut and speak to people. And I know that I'm biased, but like, honestly, getting out and networking, or however you speak, just talk to people, but talk to diverse people. Don't speak to people that are in your industry and just them, because they know a lot of the similar stuff to what you know. So try and learn from, you know, academics, techies, accountants, solicitors, graphic designers, all these different people. Meet them and learn from them. And yeah, I think that's the most valuable thing. That's the biggest one for me. I think just speaking to others and learning from them.
All right, I love it. Thank you. That was some great advice at the end, and that was a really, really interesting little interview and a great story as well. Congratulations on the business, and
Funny.
it sounds like I think, to be honest, if you could make you know, a networking business work in lockdown, that it, you know, well, that is really interesting. Thinking that like people have changed how they network, and
Yeah.
they've had to get used to it. They've had to force, you know, these changes have happened, so they've had to adapt. It's interesting that you've adapted. Sounds like you've adapted very quickly to that as well.
Had no choice, Johnny, to be fair.
Well, yeah, like I say, good luck with everything, and thank you. I hope the people watching and listening got something from this.
Fab. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks a lot.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.